From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
And this is a special Western edition. Good evening, everyone. We begin with breaking election news. In the Senate, where the Republicans need to win 10 Democratic seats to take control, CBS News estimates they've won 3 so far. But first, let's talk about the House of Representatives, because CBS News is now projecting the GOP has taken over control of the House. They have gained the 218 seats they need to take over control from the Democrats. This is a big stunner, even though it was expected. And it's a huge development for not only the Republicans in Washington, but a huge disappointment for the Obama administration, because in many ways it's a referendum on the president and the Democratic agenda as well. Let's go to Nancy Cordes. And Nancy, how did this happen and what was the strategy?
Well, Katie, Republicans really worked on picking off Democrats who won in 2006 and 2008. 2 little waves for the Democratic Party now being washed back the other way. And take a look at this map. It's still early, but you can see this is a map of Republican pickups by region. And the real big gains are taking place here in the South, where they've already wrestled 11 seats away from the Democrats, including in Virginia's 5th District, Tom Perriello. He's a freshman Democrat. He supported the president's agenda wholeheartedly. The president campaigned for him specifically, and he goes down tonight. In Florida's 8th District, Alan Grayson, another full-throated liberal, he supported the entire liberal agenda, but he also, you may recall, called his opponent Daniel Webster Taliban Dan. That didn't go over very well. Orlando voters voting him out of office, Katie.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thank you very much. Meanwhile, in the Senate, we have some projections to tell you about, because Republicans need to win 10 Democratic seats there in order to take control. CBS News estimates they've won 3 so far. In North Dakota, John Hoeven has won the seat held by retiring Senator Byron Dorgan. In Arkansas, Republican John Bozeman has unseated incumbent Democrat Blanche Lincoln. Meanwhile, in Indiana, Dan Coats takes the seat of retiring Democrat Evan Bayh. But in West Virginia, and this is very important, a key hold for the Democrats, CBS News projects Joe Manchin has won Robert Byrd's former seat. And in Connecticut, Democrat Richard Blumenthal is the projected winner in his race against Republican Linda McMahon, who is the former CEO of the WWE. Apparently, her wrestling connections turned off some women voters. In the Sunshine State of Florida, Tea Party favorite Marco Rubio wins a 3-way race, a key hold for the Republicans. And in Kentucky, another win for the Tea Party. Rand Paul defeats Democrat Jack Conway. Bob Schieffer is our chief Washington correspondent and anchor of Face the Nation. Jeff Greenfield, our senior political correspondent. Before we talk about the Senate and what's going on there, gentlemen, let's talk about what's happened in the House of Representatives. A major victory for Republicans tonight. And the question is not will they regain control, but by how many seats will they regain control, Bob?
Well, I mean, the Republicans said from the beginning this was not an election about them. It was a referendum on Barack Obama. And it turns out they're probably right. I mean, voters that went to the polls tonight sent a message to Barack Obama. Most of the people who voted tonight voted and said they did not approve of Barack Obama. Most of the people who voted tonight overwhelmingly said the economy was the big problem. This was not just a referendum of Barack Obama. It was really kind of a reputing Barack Obama when you come right down to it. He said he was going to change things, and he didn't. Whether he could have or not, that's another question. But I think that's what people held against him, Katie.
Meanwhile, Jeff, when you take a look at the profile of voters who have turned out today, the coalition that he so successfully gathered together in 2008 has been framed significantly.
No question. Women that went overwhelmingly for Obama in 2008 are splitting their votes evenly, and since men are going heavily Republican, that tells you where the majority is. Independents that went for Obama by 18 points 2 years ago, they're going heavily for Republicans now. And the dissatisfaction with the economy and the performance of government in the hands of Democrats for the last 2 years, I think is the key to this whole night, and certainly why the Republicans are going to be holding the House.
Meanwhile, in the Senate, they've got to run the table because, as we mentioned, the Democrats were able to hold on to Chris Dodd's seat in Connecticut, also that very important West Virginia seat, which was neck and neck with a popular governor, Joe Manchin, running against businessman John Racy, but they held on there. So now with the seats that are left, they've got to get them all, don't they?
They do. I mean, holding West Virginia and holding Connecticut for the Democrats may produce what little good news the Democrats have tonight, and that is it's going to be very difficult now for Republicans to take control of the Senate. It looks like now, they haven't done it yet, but it looks like Democrats will hold on to control of the Senate. It'd be hard for Republicans to do it now. So not much good news for Democrats tonight, but maybe that's a little good
because
news.
Significant inroads in the Senate, whether they take control or not, making it harder to get that filibuster-proof 60-vote majority for the Democrats and putting Barack Obama's agenda at serious risk.
That 60 votes is now going to be down to 51 or 52. You need 60 votes to pass everything except congratulations to George Washington. And I don't know how they get anything through the Senate, even with this thin majority.
Well, let's go to Chip Reed at the White House because he's standing by. And Chip, obviously the White House anticipated this blowout in the House of Representatives. Or are they at least breathing a sigh of relief about how things are unfolding in the Senate so far?
I tell you, Katie, if they're breathing, nobody really knows because the silence here is deafening. And I just walked into the press area in the West Wing where we in the media can actually walk in and talk to people. It was completely deserted. Everybody has scattered to either to other parts of the West Wing or they've simply gone home. They have gone under at this point, and it's not clear what they're going to say to us tonight. If anything, they may just wait for the president to give his response tomorrow when he holds his press conference at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
I read that he's going to talk about the importance of bipartisanship. Do you think they will? How will the White House change its tone and approach towards their Republican brethren in Congress?
Well, that's the $64,000 question right now, Katie. I'm sure it's being heatedly debated at the White House tonight, and it will be tomorrow. Do they really sincerely offer an olive branch to the Republicans? Do they say, OK, you won, we cry uncle, we're going to work with you? Or do they keep a bit of that combative tone and say, hey, as the president has done all through this campaign, saying, I'm the one who wanted to work together, you're the ones who did not? I would not be surprised if you still hear a little bit of that tone. I don't think they're going to simply give in and say, you won, we're ready to compromise with you. I think it's going to be a standoff for quite a while here. I mean, these are political warriors. They've been doing this for a long time now. I don't suddenly expect them to change dramatically overnight. On the other hand, I do expect a lot of words about compromise from the president tomorrow.
All right, Chip Reed at the White House. Thank you so much, Chip. Well, if the silence is deafening at the White House, it's the message is being heard loud and clear by the Tea Party, and Byron Pitts is at a Tea Party in the nation's capital. Byron, I was going to say happy days are here again, but I don't think the Tea Partiers are big fans of FDR.
No, that's right, Katie. It was the exact opposite of what happened at the White House. When it was announced on television that the Republicans had regained control of the House, this room erupted. People were chanting. It sort of reminded you of a moment during the Winter Olympics when the U.S. Olympic team beat the Russians. People were chanting USA, USA, hugging each other. So this was a big night for the Tea Party because they're clear that the Republicans would not have had that success without their help. Joining us now is Jenny Beth Martin. She's the co-founder of the Tea Party. Patriots is the largest Tea Party organization. What was that moment like for you? People were hugging each other when they announced that the Republicans had regained control of the House.
It's really a good feeling. It's just not about the Republican Party. It is a victory for liberty, and it's a victory for our Constitution.
How do you explain your success? 2 years ago, the Tea Party didn't exist, and tonight you're kingmakers.
Well, we are a grassroots, bottom-up organization. Our core values were created by ordinary Americans across the country. Fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, and free markets. They resonate. The Americans in this country know what they want out of their government.
This organization, for better or worse at times, has been labeled as angry. I've not seen any anger in the room this evening.
I don't think you see any anger right now. We love our country. We're happy and we're proud of our country. The frustration has been that those who are elected to represent us are not listening and haven't listened.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Katie, she made a point earlier when we were talking that the people, the Republicans elected tonight, if they don't do what they want to see done in the next 2 years, they will campaign just as hard against them. Katie, back to you.
All right, Byron, thank you very much. Byron Pitts in the nation's capital. Meanwhile, how did the Republicans put this victory together? Anthony Mason is monitoring exit poll results for us in our exit poll studio tonight. Anthony, how did they do it?
Well, we want to look at three key factors here that contributed to the Republican victory, Katie. The first of them is white voters. Republicans picked up 60% of white voters today. That's a 9 percentage point surge from the last midterm election 4 years ago. The other significant factor, Tea Party voters. Now, 40% of the voters in our exit poll described themselves as supporters of the Tea Party. And in effect, they became a block vote. 87% of Tea Party supporters went Republican. Finally, independents. Obama won independence back in 2008 with 52%. They describe themselves today as much more conservative, and they go for the Republicans by 55 or 40%. Three key swings that go Republican today, Katie, and make the difference.
All right, Anthony Mason. Anthony, thank you. Let's go to Jamal Simmons, who is our Democratic strategist here at CBS, and Dan Bartlett, our Republican strategist. You know, Jamal, let me ask you, does this mean the president might be more conciliatory towards the Republicans? How is he going to have to navigate this new terrain?
Katie, in 2008, voters voted for change. It looks like in 2010, Democrats didn't change things fast enough. And what you've seen in what we've seen just from what Anthony was reporting, the electorate changed. There are older voters, there's less diverse voters, the young voters didn't show up. So the president's kind of put in a box. He's got to, on one hand, show the independents who voted against him today in the House that he can cooperate with these Republicans, offer sort of a fig leaf. But then at the same time, he's got to do something that keeps the young voters and the more diverse voters who he needs to show up for him in 2012 inspired and stand up for the things they believe in. So he's a little bit in the box. He's got to walk this line with both feet to hold on to the independence that he needs and encourage those voters who showed up for him in 2008 to come back in 12.
Meanwhile, Dan Bartlett, you know, some of these Tea Party candidates are fairly extreme, almost libertarian in their points of view. You know, some of them have talked about phasing out Medicare and Social Security, abolishing the Department of Education. What happens? Are they actually going to be able to move forward with some of the less government proposals they campaigned on? Are those going to be neutralized by some of the more establishment Republicans in Congress?
Well, you're right. There was many of those candidates who took positions that obviously won't make the light of day with a Democratic president. But there is a lot of places for the Republicans and the new Speaker of the House, John Boehner, to coalesce around, and particularly it's going to be on taxes and on the budget. And these will be areas where there'll be a sharp line in which they feel like that is drawn between them and the Democrats in the White House. And they believe that they have the people, the mandate now from this election, to say no to what was going on in Washington, whether it's the increased spending and the taxes. But they will have a challenge. Bringing this group together to forge some sort of consensus is going to be priority number one for John Boehner.
Real quickly, Dan, do you think the Republican Party is going to move a lot more to the right, as it sort of has already during this campaign?
Well, I think what you'll see is whether it's a move to the right or not is going to be a lot to do with how Barack Obama outreaches. Jamal just talked about it. They're going to have to put out an olive branch to the Republicans. Whether Republicans accept that or not depends a lot on their behavior. So they're in a wait-and-see attitude, see what the White House does, and then pivot from there.
Sounds like gridlock to me, Dan Bartlett.
Yes, I think you're right.
All right, Dan and Jamal, thank you both so much. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, the printer cartridge bomb attack did not succeed, but officials say a test run did. Baghdad was hit tonight by a series of coordinated attacks, at least 13 using everything from car bombs to mortars. The targets were public squares, shopping districts, and restaurants, mostly in Shiite areas. 76 people were killed, more than 200 wounded. The attacks came just hours after funerals for some of the 58 who died in Sunday's siege at a Christian church in Baghdad. Fugitive terrorist Anwar al-Awlaki, the American-born cleric linked to the attempted underwear bombing, was put on trial today in Yemen in absentia. He's charged in the killing of a French contractor. Officials believe the underwear bomb was made by the same person who built the printer cartridge bombs that were intercepted last week. And as Homeland Security correspondent Bob Orr reports, the plotters may have made a dry run.
In mid-September, U.S. intelligence got a credible tip that someone, possibly connected with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, had just shipped 3 packages to Chicago. The information was so specific, counterterrorism agents overseas were able to intercept and search the packages. Inside were papers, religious books, computer materials, and other common items like compact discs. But the boxes contained no threats, no explosives, and no hint that Chicago might be a terror target. So the packages went on to their Chicago destinations, which turned up no connections to the Yemen terror group. Now law enforcement officials suspect those September shipments may have been a dry run, a test of air cargo and distribution logistics. The theory is terrorists tracked the packages online to determine when the boxes were in the air, on the ground, and when they were delivered, a timetable useful for setting timers on future bombs. Sources say the two printer bombs found Friday in Great Britain and Dubai appeared to have timing mechanisms and were once again destined for Chicago.
The printer bombs were also stopped by a specific tip, and intelligence officials say that dry run helped drive a rapid response this time when the threat was real. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
There is still no cure for the common cold, but there's a way to reduce your chances of getting one. That story is next. Hoping to avoid feeling run down by the common cold? Well, try running or some other form of exercise. A study out today found that people who exercised for 20 minutes 5 days a week cut their risk of getting a cold by 43%. Researchers suggest that exercise boosts the immune system. Disappointing news tonight in the fight against Alzheimer's. A major study found that omega-3 fatty acid supplements, also known as fish oil pills, do not improve the memory of older patients with the disease. Smaller studies had suggested omega-3 slow the mental decline brought on by Alzheimer's. And we're switching to tea when we come back, the party that came from nowhere to shake up this election. Updating our top story now, it is a whole new ballgame in Washington, D.C. CBS News is now projecting that when all the votes are counted, the GOP will win control of the new House of Representatives. They will have more than the 218 seats they need to do that. Nancy Pelosi, who made history as the first woman to be Speaker of the House, will be passing the gavel to the GOP, presumably to John Boehner of Ohio. As for the Senate, the Republicans will have a hard time taking control of that body. They need a net gain of 10 seats. So far, they have picked up 3. In North Dakota, John Hoeven has won the seat held by retiring Democrat Byron Dorgan. In Arkansas, Republican John Bozeman has unseated incumbent Democrat Blanche Lincoln. And in Indiana, Dan Coates takes the seat of retiring Democrat Evan Bayh. But in West Virginia, a key hole for the Democrats, CBS News projects Joe Manchin has won Robert Byrd's former seat. He is, of course, the governor of the state. In Connecticut, Democrat Richard Blumenthal is the projected winner in his race against Republican Linda McMahon, former CEO of the WWE. 2 big wins for the Tea Party tonight. In Florida, Marco Rubio wins a 3-way race, a key hold for the Republicans, while in Kentucky, Rand Paul defeats Democrat Jack Conway, and in Missouri, Roy Blunt has defeated Democrat Robin Carnahan. Now let's turn to Republican analyst Dan Bartlett and Democratic strategist Jamal Simmons. Let me start with you, Jamal. What happened? Where did Barack Obama go wrong to really have this happen to him during the midterm elections?
Katie, it looks like what happened very early on in this administration is that they did very good policy from a Democratic perspective, and I would argue even from a lot of the voters in this country in terms of passing a stimulus bill that was going to help health care that people want to see. But they didn't do good politics. They didn't explain the policies well enough for people to buy into them. And they didn't really put them all under the right umbrella so that everyone understood how it all fit together that would help people get jobs, help the country get more competitive. And, you know, the kids on the Brady Bunch used to sing, when it's time to change, you've got to rearrange. We're now at the point in this election where the president has learned he's got to change and rearrange some things, perhaps at the White House, maybe bring in some fresh blood and start to get the White House back on a firmer footing to take on the challenges coming forward with this Republican Congress.
And Dan Bartlett, do you think messaging was the problem, or do you think the policies were the problem?
Well, I am going to have to disagree with my colleague here. This is not a communications problem. It was the policies that were the problem. The Democrats in Congress, and more importantly, the President of the United States, took their eye off the ball. The ball was the economy and jobs. Instead, with a lot of pent-up demand of Democratic politics for a long time, they wanted to pursue a lot of these New Deal-like initiatives like health care reform, climate change, et cetera. Those are the things that were being rejected by the voters tonight. Rejected because it wasn't focused on the economy, wasn't focused on jobs, and was controversial. And that's what broke up the coalition that brought him into power in 2008, particularly with independents. They rejected that aggressive focus on intrusive government, more government control, and now we're seeing a swing back to Republicans. But just as importantly, Katie, it's going to be important that Republicans understand that they didn't win as much as they inherited this victory from Democrats. And with that comes, hopefully, some humility as they approach a new governing role.
And Jamal, what can Republicans, even if they control the House, realistically do to stimulate the economy and create jobs?
Well, I think, the Republican plan seems to be tax cuts is the answer for all things. The problem is they also want to do something about the deficit. So the deficit's going to be hard to do. So the question is, how do they do something that both stimulates jobs, like you've asked, and then also stay true to their beliefs?
And one of the aspects of the pledge to, okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. We're out of time. Stay with CBS News and this CBS station for election updates throughout the evening. Then join our CBS News election team for special hour-long wrap-ups with the latest returns and analysis at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and again at 1 a.m. Eastern. Our live coverage will be available at cbsnews.com and at youtube.com/CBS News. That's the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric reporting from CBS News Election Headquarters in New York. I'll see you again soon.